Hi, so today I'm just going to give you a very quick tutorial of Clipstudio Paint's perspective tool. Hi, my name is Luis Escobar. I'm a storyboard artist on the Simpsons television show. I've been working on the show for over 25 years now, and I'm here to empower you. So I own Clipstudio Paint. I really love the program. It has a perspective tool, and it tends to be a little bit Byzantine. It's kind of an odd tool. So just in case you wanted to learn how to use it, what does it mean, to get around it, I decided really quick to just make a video explaining how to use it and then let you do your own thing with it. So let's begin. I already opened a new file, a new project. And so the very first thing you want to do, say that you have already got something roughed out in mind. I'm not going to have anything roughed out, but usually what I would recommend is having something roughed out before you even use the perspective tool. You want to use perspective before you even start. Okay, you kind of want to create and design a composition and then backwards engineer the perspective into it. It does help to be familiar with perspective already and kind of anticipate what the perspective might actually look like. So, and that takes a lot of practice, and it does take a lot of drawing with perspective anyway. So let me just start here. So the perspective tool is a layer. So what you do is you go into the layer tool, and in the layer tool there is a ruler tool, I suppose. I don't know what to call it, but there's a little ruler here. It says ruler frame. And within this, there is one thing lit here. It says create perspective ruler. So then when you click on it, you will get, and this has been moved off screen here for me, but you should have it, a little window pops up, and it asks you if you want 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, 3-point perspective, and it gives you the check mark to create a new layer or to create this perspective ruler on the existing layer. I tend to just leave this clicked to create a new layer. It's much easier that way. You don't have the perspective tool go over one of your existing layers. So for this example, I'm going to pick 2-point perspective, and then I'm going to click OK. So what happens is that the perspective tool now has created a new layer. You can turn it off and on like any layer. And it gives you this kind of like little diamond sounding looking thing with a cross. Okay, so the way that you manipulate these lines is with the tool over here, the operation tool. You could see it here. If you see anything else here, it's because you don't have the operation tool clicked, right? So let's go to the operation tool. And when you click on any one of these lines, then suddenly you get all these little tiny dots and diamonds and crosses and things like that. So what this is, we've got this little box, and this little box moves the horizon line. This is the horizon line that I'm moving, or the eye line, up and down, up and down. So we can decide where we want to put the eye line. Usually you don't want to put the horizon line right smack in the middle. You usually want to have either the horizon line on the top third of the page or the bottom third of the page. It could be lower, it could be higher, but try to avoid having it just dead center. So I'm going to put it here in the lower third. And then you're going to see here, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, that there's these dots here. These are the vanishing points, and you could actually move the vanishing points back and forth like this. Now these lines are guiding you. They're the guides that show you where the lines will be drawn when you use these vanishing points. So let's say that we don't want these vanishing points next to each other like this. like this far apart from each other. It's really unnatural to have that. So I'm going to move this really far away, like very, very far away, to make it feel a lot more natural. And as I do, you could see that these lines here, they flatten out much more. And then let's say that this vanishing point is actually in the frame. Okay, so if you want to actually move these lines here, then there's this circle. And the circle, when you click on it and drag, it turns red. And then when you drag the circle, you move these guidelines up and down. This guideline gets moved up and down. Okay, so if you notice, also there's these little diamonds. So what are these diamonds? The diamonds, if you click on them, turns the line green. What that does is it turns off the line. It turns off this vanishing point, and I will explain to you how the perspective tool works. But for now, I'm just going to say this: by clicking the diamond, you turn off the vanishing point, or you can turn it back on by clicking it again. Okay? I will explain why this is important, why this works the way it does. So I'm going to move this out of the way. Okay, and then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something that I find extremely useful. And that is, when you come over here, there is this submenu. And then this submenu, you have it says XY plane, it says YZ plane, and then it says XZ plane. So what this does is it gives you a grid on your sheet of paper so that you could actually see what you're doing in 3 dimensions. So for example, if I was to click on this, we now have this grid here. So this shows us what's happening here on this side. So we actually see the full grid mapped out, okay? And then let's turn it off. And then this one does the opposite. It gives us this. Together we could get both these the horizon, the vanishing points views of both of these, so we could actually see how the vanishing point is going to affect the drawing. And I believe that there's a way to move these around. Yeah, so by doing this, you could actually increase and decrease these extremities, which is kind of odd, but it's interesting. Okay, so let me turn these off, because these are nice, but this is the one that I like to use. I like to use the ground plane. This really is helpful to me. And there is an extra button that appears right below on this line here, this horizontal line, that allows you to move this ground plane, this perspective up and down. But the perspective is coming from this vanishing point and the other vanishing point. So this line here that you see that's coming across, that is originating from this vanishing point here. Do you see? So I like this ground plane view because it just plants. It gives me a ground plane. It plants. There's something there solid. It makes me feel like as if there's something solid there. Okay, once you have all the vanishing points that you need in the way that you want it solved, then it's time to apply these vanishing points. So ideally, what I tend to want to do is I want to lock this so I don't end up drawing on top of this layer. And you go to the next layer. So what the program is automated to do, which is why this perspective tool is handy, is that it automatically, no matter what you do, it makes lines straight to the vanishing point. Like so. So this vanishing point, when I go from left to right, goes to that vanishing point. If I wanted to go to this vanishing point here, then I move it in that direction, and it automatically goes to that vanishing point. If I go up and down, it does perpendicular. It does horizontal lines. But when I want to do vertical lines, it'll automatically go or vertical. Boy, I'm confusing vertical and horizontal. I always do that, but anyway. So when I do horizontal lines, it does that. And when I do vertical lines, it goes up and down like that. All right. Sometimes it gets really annoying to have that happen. For example, let's say that I wanted to do horizontal lines this way, but and as I'm doing it, it starts going to the wrong vanishing point, and I don't want it to do that. So that's when you come in here and you go into operations and you turn off that one here. And now what happens is, if that is turned off, then even when I do that toward that horizon line, I mean that vanishing point, it doesn't work. It's turned off. No matter what I do, it will only go to the ones that are turned on. So it's because it's green, it's turned off. It only goes horizontal and vertical. Now, if I don't want this to go vertical, then I can turn off the vertical as well. So go back to operations, click on it. I find the diamond for the vertical. I turn that off. Let me lock that layer again. And now the only line I can do is the horizontal line that goes to the vanishing point on the right. I can't even if I do a straight down line, it's only doing that vanishing point over there. So that comes in handy when you want to isolate the type of line you want to make and not get all confused with all the other lines getting in the way. And that is why the diamond is important. All right, so that's essentially it. If you know anything more about perspective, then the rest is simple. You want to make a box, then you just create a box in perspective using what you know about perspective, and you should be able to draw a box. So let me see. Let me turn these things back on. And then draw a box. Oops. I want it to go to that. There we go. It's a little bit temperamental sometimes. So sometimes it's not very ideal. And that's a very extremely wonky box because, but it's accurate to the perspective that we're using. But that is essentially how you use the perspective grid in Clipstudio Paint. And again, you can turn off and on the perspective grid so that if you just want to draw freehand, now I can draw freehand and do whatever I want over here, blah blah blah. I'm just making marks. But the other thing is, let me show you, and you can have multiple. You could create another layer from the ruler and have multiple perspective guides. So for example, this is now a 1-point perspective, and using the operations tool, it gives me the ability to move this up and down, and this only gives me, and they only have the one vanishing point. So I only have one vanishing point here for 1-point perspective. So we got that like that. And we also have the three-point perspective vanishing we have the 3-point perspective tool. And now with the 3-point perspective, we have not only this horizon line that goes up and down, and we also have these vanishing points, but we have the third one down here. There's a third vanishing point. Oh, it's up here actually. So we have it up here, and then we can move it down. So we have a completely random, crazy vanishing point to make a 3-point perspective. So let me lock this. And so we've got 3-point perspective. Let's see. Here, here, here. Jeez. It's really temperamental. This is why it's better to turn off the perspective tool. But this is the horizon line. We're looking underneath it, so let's do that. And then it goes to the third vanishing point here. I think what I intended to do was this here, and then this goes there, and the line came out. So because of the temperament, because of the way that this tends to go to the lines or the areas that you don't want, that's why it's best to turn off. We're using the diamond, some of the perspective lines, some of the vanishing points, so that you don't end up doing what I was doing, which is kind of a bit of a mess, just kind of missing things. Okay, so that's it. That's the how to use the perspective grid. Like I said, it's a little bit tricky. It's a bit temperamental. You have to know when to turn off the vanishing points and when in order to get the results you want. But it's extremely useful. If you know how to use perspective really well, it speeds up your process a ton. So this is not something that you're going to really learn perspective with as much as if you were to have done it on paper on your own. This is something that once you already know perspective, it's really simple and fast and useful to use, because you already know what you're doing. You just kind of crank out the vanishing points and horizon line, and you don't have to like worry about setting up the sheet of paper the way you would have if it was on a traditional medium on paper. This just speeds things up really quite a bit. So if you found this video helpful, I highly encourage you to go and support me on Patreon. And speaking of patrons and Patreon, I would like to thank my existing patrons: Aaron Garcia, Ahobo, Anastasia, Bill Fisher, Bill Munier, Benny Brett, Brooke Brown, Chanel Winja, Christina McKay, Eric Prestaman, Eric Salham, Gallo Viking, George Crawford, George Ward, Heather, Hyla Lacefield, Ingrid Hayek, Ken Dirks, Lynn, Mary Chorozi, Michael Rasmussen, Nathan Seabolt, Okugbo, Kenneth, Paul Nass, Phil Itman, Rain, Richard Anthony, Shopping for Noobs, Sterling A. Brooks, Steve Howard, Steve R., Tamara M. Cotton, Tim Bazarath, Tim John, Ulf Meyer, Vincent Dalpra, William Bell, and Young Stormlord. Thank you so much for being my patrons, and I will see you next time. All right, bye.